Welcome to Agile tutorial from Simplilearn. I am CMR Chandra MR, a professional consultant and coach, certified Agile Scrum Master, PMP, Prince 2 practitioner, ITL4 managing professional, COVID 5 and DevOps. As part of this video tutorial, we are going to understand what is Agile, the basic details one should know about Agile. To understand this better, let us look at a time in the late 90s what was happening with software development firms. So they used to follow waterfall methodologies. So there used to be expression like, sir, you have a problem. So what happened? So our client want a new feature to the software. We are already midway creating the software. We can't add the feature. So what does it mean? So there is a scenario where the change is asked. So why change? Change may be because of adding certain features, removing certain features, modifying certain things already given. What is wrong in that? Why can't we do that change? So now point here is not about doing the change itself. It's about the effort additionally it takes. Cost, money in terms of which is going out, the effort, then the scope which is going to change at the same time. You also need to put more efforts which will delay the project. So now is it okay? So 90s it was okay. Today is it okay? A big question mark. So why is that not okay? So we need to understand that very clearly, right? I knew we should not have used the waterfall methodology for development. So is that an issue with the waterfall methodology? So answer is no. If it is today's scenario, answer would be yes. If it is 90s, answer would be no. So what changed in this 20 years or 15 years? The dynamics of the market changed. The behavior of consumers changed. So if you look at anyone who is using any product, it may be a software product or a hardware, like if you have a mobile phone or a television or any application, mobile application or application used on your systems. The upgradation of the new features and functionality of that is improved more and more, and consumer wants it more. And you have a very less time to respond. That is one thing. Second thing, there is a lot of competition. If you do not respond quickly, competition will take over. So for you to sustain and grow, it is very essential that you understand this dynamics and you need to respond quickly, which was a bit difficult when it comes to approach what is called waterfall model. Now, how do we address this? So what is that waterfall model is all about? Why is it difficult for us? So the methodology where waterfall model is used involves teams following a series of steps and only going forward after the previous steps are completed. So there is a wait time involved. So until the previous steps are completed, only then I can move to the next. So it is a slower thing. It would take certain longer duration. So it is best used in the scenarios where the teams are small and the project is expected to move in a predictable manner. So predictability is very important. When we follow waterfall methodology, predictability. The variation should be as lesser as possible. So what is that predictability I'm speaking about? As I create this product, as a results comes up, if it takes 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it's okay. So this is how the product would look like. The predictability, how the product would look like, how that particular output would come. So when is that going to come? Is it okay? If I bring that result after 2 years, is that okay? So if everything is okay that way, without any variations as such, very less variations, then it's fine. So because of following waterfall model, uh, what is that methodology? What is that flow? We need to understand that. So requirements gathering and documentation is the first thing what used to happen, which is true in agile methodologies also. But the main difference here is the requirements gathering and documentation happens in detail, a comprehensive one. Now once that is signed off, only then it is moved to the design. Now based on that requirement which is gathered, which is full, comprehensive, then the design will happen based on that. The consideration of process, the products, the people, the environment, then the design happens, which is again a detailed design. Now once the implementation starts, if you find any deviations, the correction needs to be done. Since the design is in detail, the deviation possibility is as less as possible. But the challenge comes up when the dynamics in the market, when the dynamics of customer changes. Customer asks for change, then you may require to do the change. Now, when you want to do that change, you may require to do that change only after understanding what would be the impact of this change in the entire output which you're going to create, which is very comprehensive one. So because of this, it consumes time, it consumes extra effort. So it may be a scenario where the scope of work is reduced as well. Even after that, this exercise has to be done, which will delay the project. So this was okay. So when this model, when things were done, things were taken up for changes, it was okay because the consumer behavior, as I mentioned, there is a lot of wait time for the consumers also. So there was less competition, but today it is not. I need to go quicker. So because of this, what are the disadvantages which has came up to the consumers or to the organization who actually follow waterfall methodologies in today's scenario? So what could be those? So making changes would be difficult, as I mentioned earlier. So then it doesn't focus on end user client, customer perspective value. So today I think more and more we're speaking about creating a value in the consumer perspective, customer perspective. And the time it takes for consumer to realize the value, how long it takes, the more it delays in realizing the values by the consumer, there is a delay in terms of making your product impression better in the consumer's mind. So competition will take over. So your existence will be in bigger threat. So testing phase is delayed until most of the project is completed because it has to follow step by step, wait the things to complete and then testing happen. Then measuring the progress within the stages is difficult. So why is it difficult measuring the progress within the stages? Because the deliverables or the metrics what are defined to measure at a milestone and at a end of the phase to understand whether everything is delivered as part of it. Now let us look at how Agile is going to help us to address these disadvantages mentioned in waterfall model. So what is Agile? The basic meaning of Agile is to move faster, be flexible, respond to change, etc. But to accomplish this, there are a lot of methodologies. Now, there is something called Agile Manifesto and 12 Principles of Agile, which we need to understand. So, following this, accomplishing this can only help us in becoming Agile. So in 2001, Agile was introduced. So that's where the term Agile came into picture, where people start realizing what is Agile and why should we adopt that Agile methodologies. So while it was introduced, so Agile Manifesto was also released. It's a set of principles used in project management and software development. So basically there are 4 points which we need to understand very correctly, very clearly so that we can able to understand what is Agile is all about. Right? It enables team to deliver value to their customers with ease. So Agile team deliver work in small but usable increments. Then evaluation of the requirements, plans and results takes place continuously. This allows teams to respond to changes quickly. Now change was one of the scenario what we were speaking about. Now responding to change quickly is one of the disadvantages what we spoke about and here it is addressed. It is considered to address, that is very important. Now when we respond to change quickly, it is not that I just quickly responded but I did not address that problem or that scenario. It is very essential to address that scenario as well effectively and efficiently. So now Agile is a concept, right? So it has a detailed manifesto based on which all the Agile methodologies are created. So what is this Agile manifesto is all about? So it was created during February 2001. So which details out the values and principles of Agile processes, which says there are some values which is mentioned in the left, which has more weightage compared to the one which is in the right. Now when we say this, for example, let us go one by one. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. So are we saying we don't value the process and tools? That is not the case. Now let us look at what were the typical issues or challenges anyone would have expressed regarding the processes. So delay, maybe bureaucracy, and they cannot have a flexibility to move faster. So basically delays because of the approval which is not happening because of the processes. Now, how do we address this? So, can I eliminate the process itself? Answer is no, because in the absence of tools and processes, none of the things which we can do easily can exist. So, it should be there. Process and tool should be there. The way it should be defined, it should also ensure there is individuals and interactions, encouraged to have that individuals and interactions while having the process and tools. So, next is working products or comprehensive documentation. So when we say comprehensive documentation, as I mentioned in the waterfall methodology, during the requirement gathering, during designing, there is a detailed documentation which is made. So which take lot of efforts in creating those. Now, while delivering the challenge, what anyone was faced was the change which is coming up and making changes to these documentations, which is an additional effort. Now, if we have a working products, if I have a bigger product, in that a module of that, I keep creating every small modules of it and start integrating to the base model. Now, I will only focus on the documentation for that particular model working piece, which I am going to create in the next iterations. Then my documentation changes are less. And also the way I'm making the documentation is initially I would have a full skeleton of the entire product which I'm going to create, the roadmap. And upon that, I'm going to making the detailed documentation for that only for that working piece rather than the full product itself. Then these working piece documentation which I'm going to create, as I create the working pieces, I'm also getting the feedback because I'm doing the interactions with the users, the consumers, the end users. So I get the feedback, I keep making the changes quickly and then documentation will become accordingly. The small pieces of documentation which happens with those small working modules which are created and those are consolidated over a period of time. By the time the product ends, you have a comprehensive documentation. The project ends, you have a comprehensive documentation. So it saves a lot of time. So documentation is important, but the way we accomplish the documentation is one by one, not in one go. Next is customer collaboration or contract negotiation. So any engagement or any relationship or any business, can it happen in the absence of contract? Answer is no. There should be a contract. Now, how this contract should be when we want to follow an agile? It should allow the customer collaboration. Why are we collaborating? To understand what customer is required, to understand what customer needs is fulfilled, right? So now this requires a lot of flexibility in the contract itself, so that commercial is one area which gets impacted and there should be guidelines for that also in the contract. So that during the collaboration, during the change, during the effort being put, customer is also informed what is the change which is going to happen in terms of commercial as well as time and everything, so that it is documented in the contract. So there is no confusion. Responding to change or following a plan. Now I cannot have a rigid plan as we were speaking about waterfall methodology, so that we need to go like this only. So based on the scenarios changes, so we may require to change your directions and move faster. So responding to change requires a specific flexibility which is required in the plan, so that I don't have a plan which is very rigid, and that provides some flexibility. That's how I can able to create my plan, so that I can able to move or respond to that specific scenarios which are changing. So this is called Agile Manifesto, and this Agile Manifesto has 12 principles associated with this. Now, keeping this Agile Manifesto on 12 principles, all the Agile methodologies have created their own approaches and framework. Now, let us look at what are those 12 principles, the Agile principles. So, Agile principles. So, here are some of principles that need to be followed to make a processes agile. So, first principle is about customer satisfaction. So, one need to satisfy the customer through early and quick delivery of the product. Now, someone who is hungry, if you give them a water or a food immediately, a piece of bread, at least there is some satisfaction. There is some realization, yes, I got it what I need. So, energy is back. So, it is very much required to ensure seeing things in a customer perspective and customer is satisfied. So customer satisfaction is not a result of the survey what I do. It's about how I deal with the consumer, what is that impact, the perceptions I'm building with the consumer, and what do I know about my customer? Do I really understand the pulse of my customer? How associated am I? How close am I? How am I collaborating with the customer? That will help you to understand how satisfied your customer is. It is very essential to consider customer satisfaction. And the second principle would be welcome change. So changing needs need to be addressed even late in the development process. So change can happen anytime. Now these changes should not become a challenge. So there should be a flexibility in your design itself which will bring in. So that is the reason I think when you move faster, so it doesn't mean that you eliminate or you just keep introducing the defects and move faster. No, that is not allowed. So whenever there is a change in the feature, whenever there is a change to some specific product functionality, accommodating that should become easier. Whatever the methodology I follow, that should help me in terms of accommodating. So I should be welcoming changes. It's okay for me to have the change. So that is not a challenge anymore for me. So principle 3, deliver frequently. So ensure software is delivered frequently, focusing on shorter time scales. As I was mentioning while discussing the manifesto point, Like I keep creating a smaller piece of product modules so that I keep putting into the base model and integrating those. And ultimately, once all the features functionalities are integrated, we have a product with all the features and functionalities. So this needs to happen more frequently. So the release of those working piece should happen more frequently, more repeatedly, so that customer is seeing those working piece and experiencing and giving their feedbacks. So quick changes to those working piece, making that will become easier. Then work together. So when I say work together, it is very essential that developers and business individuals need to work together through the course of project, which means involvement of customers, involvement of suppliers, involvement of your own team. Everyone should work together. Each one should understand each other's perspective view. If there is no proper understanding about each other's perspective view, it is quite obvious what was expected, what was delivered would not match. So there should be correct understanding. To have that correct understanding, one should work together, collaborate. So they should speak, express, which is very important. So feedback has to be given by consumers regularly. Similarly, the organization who is doing the project should also keep giving the feedbacks to the suppliers to make necessary changes. And once it works together in a unison, I think that would help in terms of bringing out the results the way it is required. That would help customer to get the value. Motivated team. So projects need to build around motivated individuals and they must be trusted to get the job done. Means when will the team get motivated? When the work what they are doing is acknowledged. When the work what they are doing, the results are seen, experienced, and then feedback is given. There is an opportunity for learning and contribution. Their contribution is acknowledged. Only then team is motivated. When there is a motivated team, when team feels there is someone with whom they can look up to, it is quite obvious team will also come up with certain set of innovation in their mind, giving their feedback as well, involving themselves in terms of getting the results what is required. So it is always essential to ensure the team which is involved in creating the products is always motivated. So I think when we say team, the conflict also come across. There may be a clash between various different thoughts and preferences. So one cannot just shy away. Being a manager, one cannot shy away from it. He or she should involve, sit with the team, resolve those, put things in the right direction. So right lead, interpersonal skills are very important here. Next, face-to-face interactions. So which helps in terms of most efficient means of communication, which helps in terms of giving a proper clarity in terms of what is required. So that I sent an email, I expect the person to do it. That is not the case what we're discussing about. So more and more interactions which should happen face to face so that each other understand what requires to be done. And there is a quick feedback which can happen when that particular interactions conversation which keeps happening. So one can understand other perspective view as well. Then working software, so it is a primarily the deliverable which you're speaking about, which has to come regularly. So more and more working piece as it comes. Customer can give feedback based on their experience on this working piece. Instead of just imagining something and then giving the feedback. So it should not look like an hypothesis or something which is in the dreamland. So I told something, the person who heard visualize something else. It should not end up that way. Instead of that, give the working piece, expect the consumer, the user to give the feedback so that it helps in terms of creating that particular product ultimately which is usable and which is going to create value to the consumers. So next is constant pace. So agile process promotes sustainable development. So it should not, I did it and I sleep. I did it and then I'm waiting for something else. No. There should be frequent deliverables which is happening. So there should be constant movement from left to right, from beginning to end, so that the deliverables which are expected keeps happening so that consumers or users are realizing the value of it. So it should be constant pace, the velocity, the speed which needs to be adopted. Then good design, agility can be improved by focusing on technical excellence and good design. So when we say technical excellence and good design, it is very essential to understand insight towards what is that product being delivered, insight towards what is the technology being used, insight towards the processes, the capabilities, skills. So when all this comes together, when people sit together and focus on creating that product or services, so they are putting the effort towards designing it appropriately so that that will fit for purpose. So since things are moved step by step in terms of creating a working piece, the detailed designing of that small working piece would happen, which can happen quicker as well. And since these are going and fitting into the architecture, which is basically open architecture kind of scenarios, what we're speaking about. So all those modules, what you create, you keep plugging into it. So that you are designing that small piece is quicker. So instead of designing the entire system as a whole in detail, you're just creating that small pieces and fitting into that architecture which is open. So pluggable. So that gives flexibility as well, and changes to the design will become easier if it's not working. And the agility helps in accomplishing that. Simplicity, the amount of work that's not being done needs to be minimized. Meaning, when we say simplicity, doesn't mean less, right? So the appropriate number of tasks, the minimum number of tasks which needs to be done, and mostly I think all non-value adding activities and processes would be removed. It has to be removed. So the more optimized, more simpler in terms of handling things is always good, so that only those what is required to be done are done. So it is very clearly visible and there will be clarity. Self-organization. So when we say self-organized teams, who is not capable of everything, but when you look at a team as a whole, each one has different skills, many skills, not one or two skills, many skills which they are complementing to each other. So they come together, they discuss together, they focus on the architectures, requirements and design and address it together. So team is also owning. The ownership is one thing when it comes to picture when we say team. So here, since team is actually taking up that ownership and organizing themselves to accomplish the results, the products, what is required. So then obviously the results will happen the way it is needed. And they will become accountable as a team. So they cannot have a blaming scenario where because of one or two members it is happening. They should collaborate better. They should be self-organizing what should happen. So next is reflect and adjust. So when are we going to reflect? Reflect upon what is that happening, learn, understand, keep learning it. Having a reflection to that what is happening means responding to that so that improvement can happen quicker. Effectiveness can be improved by the team regularly reflecting on it. So team is also understanding, team is also having that accountability to ensure that necessary adjustments, necessary actions are taken to make those changes and corrections quickly. So these are about 12 principles. So which helps that accomplishment of manifesto points, the four manifesto points what is mentioned. So keeping these four manifesto points, four values which is mentioned in manifesto, and then 12 principles. So keeping these in mind, any agile methodologies have their own approaches and they accomplish all of this.